Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Stina Borth. Stina is the founder and CEO of Keymaker Services. In this episode, we'll be discussing Stina's insights on how we change the way we think about money and neurodiversity. Stina, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited for this conversation. So, let's get started off with learning a little bit about you. What is your origin story?
Well, I love this question because it was one that I was asked a while ago from somebody else, and it made me start thinking, like, where did I originate? How did this all come from? Where did Keymaker start? And I really think it came from me as a child, so little Stina, being a solution seeker. I always was interested in being that, keymaker, just that theory within my business of opening the door. So be that keymaker, solving problems. I wanted to solve the problem for mom. I wanted to solve the problems for me. I wanted to solve the problems for the neighbor. And so I learned the word yet. We haven't found the solution yet, and learned to really seek. And I found it inspiring to solve puzzles. Now, fast forward as an adult, I've learned that neurologically in the nervous system, solving puzzles is such a source of pleasure, of dopamine and serotonin. That makes sense. Then I started a business, believe this, at age 12, babysitting business, because that was a need. There were all of these families in the neighborhood and they needed babysitters, and there was no communication. How I was going to create a network with this. So little Stina at age 12 created flyers and business cards and biked around and put those, and distributed it. And then I knew, I know you need to make communication easy. And I knew that if you wanted something to go well, you had to put the time and effort. And then now I have the words now as an adult to invest in it. So I took the first pot of money that I made from babysitting and I paid for a phone line. I presented it to my parents and said, I want my own phone line for my babysitting business. And I invested that so that I could get the communication back and forth from my clients. Fast forward, to young adulthood, and I found my way into education and language development. And I found that I was really good at coordinating, about taking jargon and translating it to folks that didn't really have that as their background, bridging connections. And then I started working in more of the education planning and design of programs, again, coordinating of specialized services and bringing people together. And then I hit this space where I felt like there was too many blocks. And so naturally, as an entrepreneurial spirit that we can see through the pattern of my upbringing, I said, well, I'm going to try this on my own outside of the systems. And so I started working privately with youth and young adults and focusing on executive functioning skills education, which is huge within the neurodiversity and neurodivergent space. So folks that are neurodivergent are those that have often a diagnosis that's different, that they're not neurotypical. So they might have a diagnosis of like ADHD, OCD, autism, some social anxieties, dyslexia, all of that. So their thinking is different. Their nervous system processes information differently. And so what we decided within Keymaker is that this was going really well. And then I was finding that I was also doing education with adults that were linked to these youth and young adults. So then here comes working with organizations and companies, and where Keymaker is today. So it's just kind of like it organically led to each step of build. A lot of it focused on providing education and training, providing language and connection and coordinating. for access.
Well, that's awesome. And I think, that this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot is, we expect everybody to be the same,
Mm-hmm.
and people are very different,
Yeah.
whether it's neurodivergent, culturally diverse, or what have you. So, just to go into it, as you mentioned the term executive functioning, I know that people are probably wondering, what is executive function? What does that mean?
So executive functioning is, I like to call it the glue. It's the glue of any other skill that you have. If you are fantastic in mathematics, you're a fantastic communicator, you're really good at, I mean, let's say you have a degree in engineering or something specific for your career. If you do not have executive functioning skills like task management, time management and awareness, communication, emotional regulation, so that you can manage your nervous system and that frontal lobe. So if we shut down into like fight or freeze, we can't make decisions. We can't move forward with projects. So all of that is executive function. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned attention management, 100% is part of that. So our attention, more than one task. So having a main task, shifting to a secondary, and then being able to shift our attention back to the primary tasks that were at hand. Those skills are essential in any relationship, communication, inside work or outside of work, as well as performance in school, in the work environment, really anywhere. If you don't have that, you can't follow the instructions on a recipe because you wouldn't have working memory, which is also under that executive functioning skill. So it's the glue. You have to have it. You can't hold anything together without it for productivity or otherwise.
Well, that's really interesting. So how do you see that having an impact on people and handling their money? I mean, I know there's the freezing part, but what else, how else do you see that translating to the world of money?
Yeah. So with executive, I love that you've mentioned the freezing because a lot of us do have that fight or freeze with money. There's fear, there's that response that when it comes to a money conversation, I share that. That's something that I'm trying to reinstall and break. But executive function is essential for you to create plans. It's essential for you to be able to analyze and manipulate information so that you can find the strategy that works best for you and results in the desired outcome. It's executive function with your finances is going to be being able to ask questions, and also being able to regulate enough that you can stay in the conversation. So a lot of times we will ask for guidance from maybe a finance professional, and then it's like gloss over because it's just so much information that's new. So really that self-awareness and advocacy goes under executive function. And so being able to say, this is what's happening to me. I can't access this information because it's overloading my system. And I need to advocate with whoever it is I'm working with to slow down, to break it down, to simplify the language so that I understand what decisions I'm making.
Well, that's awesome. So, I guess your advice for financial professionals would probably be to slow it down and simplify.
Yes, and I would say definitely educate yourself on neuroinclusion, on neurodiversity, on the nervous system and emotional regulation practices, if not for yourself, but so that you can recognize it in your clients. So what that means is we all have nonverbal signals that will show that's we're working through an activation of some sort. Like this is causing me some stress. I'm confused. Looking for that, and then making sure that you're creating that safe space so that someone can ask you those questions, and then you are the one to guide them through it. And actually, that's a great business practice if you work in finances, because if you can be the person that's safe for this really scary topic about money, and then you're also able to hold that space for when it becomes uncomfortable and create safety, you're speaking directly to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the basic. That means that person is going to be your client for a very long time because you're part of their safety and part of their tribe.
Well, I love that. And I think, I guess I don't want to say the best advisors, but some of the more successful advisors do this intuitively,
Yeah.
is they provide that for their clients.
I would agree. Absolutely.
So, what are you currently working on? What is Keymaker Services about?
Keymaker Services is all about educational services on executive function based in neuro-inclusive practices. So I've thrown a few neuro terms out. Neuro-inclusive means that we are including the knowledge that the nervous system has diversity within it. We have differences in our cognitive abilities and how we think. So we're acknowledging that. And when we're saying we're being neuro-inclusive, we're including that in the decisions and how we present information and how we support individuals. So the work we do is all focused on that. And really it ranges from, middle school-ish age, even sometimes younger, but really middle school all the way through. Right now I'm working with like a 55-year-old one-on-one. So there's a huge range where everybody needs to develop these and maintain these skills of executive function. And it's typically those looking for themselves, for their company, their team, for their youth or young adult. And then it's always focused in executive function, neurodiversity awareness, maybe some regulation. And then most recently, I've been pivoting a lot into career college readiness and development, just because I'm noticing, hey, we have a huge pocket of these young adults that have not been trained, have not been supported and provided the education on not just picking the right school, the right job, but what's the strategy? Just like with finances. Actually, they kind of overlap. Finding your career path, finding the strategy within that. Who do you network with? Who do you do informational interviews and your internships? How do you make connections that are at the human level so that it's in line with your career and beneficial? And also your high performance. So we're focusing more energy in this space because of the need that's really popping up. But overarching executive function, neurodiversity, college career, readiness and success development, everything else is a wide range.
Well, that's awesome. And I have a friend, I don't know if you know her, Bobby Rebell, who viewers of the podcast have seen on here, who specializes in launching financial grownups. And, which is just really just completely focused on this area of young adults transitioning to being in charge of their money life.
Yeah. And we don't have really what's interesting in our education systems is that, and even I have a lot of knowledge too, because of just past life working within specialized education, case management and such, is that a lot of the resources and programs end and drop off after K-12. So this young adult space, the options are very few. And a lot of times it's like through vocational rehab or private and have to be sought out. It really would be beneficial if we invest in our youth and young adults, because otherwise our companies, our businesses of all fields have no succession plan. Like we don't have anybody prepared for that.
Yeah, 100%. So, Stina, why are you passionate about financial preparedness and about money?
It touches everything. It touches every aspect of our lives. It provides access and opportunities, whether that's in work, lifestyle, relationships, if we're really honest and candid about it. It is also a high area of influence on our relationships. That includes like partnerships and spouses, friendships, business partnerships, work. It also, if we are prepared or unprepared, or how literate we are, it impacts our access to schools and education, even education as adults, like whether you could go to a conference or continued education, or even if we think about it, basic human needs. I mentioned Maslow's before, and Maslow's hierarchy, I don't know if it's really a hierarchy. I don't know but we know that's a need to have shelter, food, and water and safety, and finances are directly related to all of that.
Yeah, I love it. I think, money is related to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I've even seen illustrations of that where people show, is that you have your base, that might be your insurance and, paying your mandatory expenses, however you want to look at it. And you can look at the money world that way. What is one basic money concept that you wish people knew?
I think really related to the last question, it touches everything in some way, but also that a lot of money out there that no one is going to shine that spotlight on, meaning that you have to ask, you have to look for it, and you have to apply for it. I can't tell you how many clients I work with that are in different roles or different spaces, but specifically comes to mind for this, our youth and young adults. They have no idea what an ABLE account is. And an ABLE account is basically a savings account that somebody that has a label, a diagnosis label, a disability, that they can put savings in that and then use that to pay for services like those that Keymaker and myself provide. And actually recently I read something that the age limit of contribution was capped at 26, and I believe it's going even up to 46, which is so amazing and supportive of adult education when it comes to access for those that are neurodivergent. There's also other education savings accounts that lots of people have no idea. And what's cool about these accounts is that they're pre-tax. So you have that savings there for money that can be used to provide access to things like education that give you more opportunity. And it's not just tuition and things, it's private, one-on-one. It's also for those that are business owners or entrepreneurs. You can use these types of training education as a business expense. Scholarships and grants, it changes all the time. So this is what I'm talking about. Shine that spotlight on. You got to look. You got to have like a rotation of each month. I look and see if there's anything more that's applicable to me. And then really asking, another piece is like reimbursement through your healthcare. Sometimes you can get things deemed as medically necessary, and then you can go through that. It's a lot of work. You got to do the digging, but nobody's going to come to you and say, here it is. So I think that's the concept is it's there. You have to go out into the woods and start looking for it and start asking for it.
Yeah, you have to ask questions. You have to be curious. And, just a reminder, if you join the Get Ready Money Club, which is free, it's my weekly newsletter where you'll receive a weekly action item that helps you review through the course of the year all areas of your financial life. And you can find out more about that on my website at tonystewart.com. So just a little shout out to that.
That's fantastic.
So, I try to take people through all these different areas. And one of the weeks is, how you're planning for the next generation, which can be your kids, grandkids, but, specifically talking about, 529s, ABLE accounts, and all those things. So people focus on that for a week. So Stina, what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
Fear. I think I'm still, like I said, I'm still rewiring this in my own brain and my nervous system. I've lived in a range of relationship with money, and at no point can I say, yep, fear was completely gone, that it left me. I've lived where food stamps were part of it. I've lived in luxury apartments, but I also grew up in a situation that's really unique where I had one parent that would bake bread to save money and pinch pennies so that the housing expenses could be paid that month. And I had one parent that, 7-bedroom, what some might call a mansion. So I learned kind of like that rich parent, poor parent. And what I also learned is they both had fear related to money for different reasons, but I inherited both. And so I think the habit that we can change and break is really the fear around it. And the way we can do that is really through normalizing, start co-managing money with our youth and young adults, start co-managing with our life partners and spouses, and having these conversations, because with exposure, we start redirecting that shutdown and we start taking the power back. It reminds me of a quote that I read years ago that said, everything you want is on the other side of fear. So we have to go through it. We have to feel it fully in our nervous system and then go, all right, I'm going to interrupt this. This is my plan. And having someone to do that with, or maybe a few people, is good.
That's awesome. And I think that's so important. And just a quick book recommendation for people who want to learn more about this. There's Farnoosh Torabi has written a book called State of Panic, where it is all about overcoming the fear of money and her personal journey in overcoming the fear of money and being, an expert in the world of financial education. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes for people who are really interested in going deep on this topic, because it is an important topic. But as you say, it's normalizing it, having conversations, talking about it. But when we make money into this thing that we don't want to talk about and we're scared, it's going to rule our lives.
It will. And the thing is then it almost becomes this taboo. Like we can't touch it. And so shifting that and talking about it and creating, I would also think about even creating a strategy, being led through and modeling that for our youth or young adults. I mean, even now as adults, being able to say, hey, and not feeling dumb. Hey, I don't know how to do that. Who's got a template? Who can show me how this works and how to strategize through making financial decisions and a long-term plan?
Yeah. Well, and actually that's one week that I also cover in the Get Ready program is, just here's how to have the money conversation. And I'm just re-releasing a discussion guide, which will hopefully be out by the time this show is published. It has questions that you can talk about each month with your loved ones or your friends or your coworkers or your employees or clients, whoever you want to facilitate money discussions with, because that's part of it. And, we talk about money stories, which is also what you're talking about is, how did you see your parents talking about money? If your parents argued about money, you're probably not going to really want to talk to your spouse about money. It's going to be like, that's a danger area. So what money myth are you trying to break?
So I would say probably that it's something to fear. I think it's back to that fear. It's that it's something to fear, that it's something. I think I'm better along the journey or further along the journey of changing this. But I think for a long time, I had this belief that it was something I'm not good at. This isn't my thing. I just need to rely on somebody else to take that has more of maybe a finance degree or something, a specialist to do this. And so shifting that of really feeling comfortable, I think the myth to break is that it's nothing to fear and that it is something that everybody needs to be able to access the knowledge of and can access the knowledge of, that it's not just some authority or someone that's really good in math. Right?
Yeah, I love that. And, I hear that from so many guests is, that anyone can be good at money. And I believe that as well. But it's like you talk about is you have to have a desire to do so. That doesn't mean that you're going to have the confidence to do so, but just that you want to do so, and wanting to do so is the first step. And, there are lots of resources. But warning about resources is be careful of the source of people that you're getting money information from. But there are, some good people to get money from.
And maybe diversify. I mean, I have found with everything is if I can gather multiple sources. I think about even when I gather data that informs the practices and the trainings that me and my team provide, you need many data points to then decide what's the overall median of the data. So if you listen to just one person or even 3 people, that's not very many data points. Maybe you want to start gathering, 5 more, have conversations. What does that feel like? Does it logical? And then maybe even listening to, you probably have this of like your intuition. If something is going off, you don't know the reason why, but something's off, something's off.
Yeah. And that's, I have a lot of experience working in financial abuse and best practices. And that is something is that people oftentimes just miss their gut saying like, you know, um, they walk past that. And, that's so important. It's just, if something seems too good to be true, then it probably is. We hear that, but, it is something to think about. So, the other thing is you mentioned diversifying sources of information. That's what this podcast is all about, is showcasing people with very diverse views of money so that hopefully viewers and listeners can find people who resonate with them that they can follow and get more information from. So, the next question is all about conversations, is how do you feel we can improve the money conversation?
Mm-hmm. I think resonating back is the normalization. I think also remembering that our nervous system is designed to keep us alive. So when we have those instincts, we have that feeling that's off. Finances is our real life hunting and gathering for survival, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how we stay alive and survive. So if something is activating, to be able to speak that in conversation, whether you feel silly or justified. I really wish it wasn't just those seeking out a financial advisor. I almost wish it was financial institutions kind of did this on a regular basis. And I think some do offer some education, but upping that not only for what I'm seeing is more financial literacy is coming out for youth and young adult. I would love for more of that to be present for us to pick up the drop stitch. I think I knit. So when you drop a stitch, there's a hole, you have to go all the way back and redo it, or that hole is going to stay there. So we dropped a stitch and we have all these adults that really don't know. So we would like our communities to be financially healthy, right? And that's prosperous. What's good for my neighbor is good for me. So probably providing that through, whether it's workplaces, financial institutions, communities like what you're building, Tony, too. It's just providing access.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. And there are a lot of places to access it. And it does get back to the desire, but it's also, that people have to overcome, like all the feelings like we've been talking about, that they can't do it, that, but anybody can do it, and there's so many people out there who are talking about money, who provide amazing resources. You can easily find somebody who, well, maybe not easily, but if you look around, you can find somebody who resonates with you and will help you, overcome your drop stitch. You're the first guest to mention drop stitch, so congratulations. No prize for you, unfortunately.
That's the prize. I was the first.
Yeah, there you go. So, what advice would you give your younger self if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about money?
Oh, jeepers. Stina. Thank you. Create and write out a strategy. And then my younger self will probably be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So take a course, find a course, ask somebody, sign up for something, so to take a class and learn something, start saving, investing for more than just a goal that's like under a year type of a thing. Ask lots of help, because I do think that I did probably ask for advice, but I think what knowing my personality now and what I was then as a child and as a young adult, I was very driven, had a goal, went right through it, is to stop for a minute and look around and see who might have experience that could influence and help. And stick with it. I think the strategy,
Awesome.
this having a strategy and having education and input probably would have helped with some not so like the lessons wouldn't be as hard.
That's all right, and that's okay. But I think that's wonderful advice is to ask for help, which is not necessarily the same as asking for advice.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we just need somebody to help us out, not necessarily tell us what to do,
Yeah.
but even to listen to us about money and how we're feeling about money. So, what is your go-to favorite money resource, whether it's a podcast, book, newsletter, app, or website? Just your number one go-to money
You.
resource.
It's you.
Awesome.
I think you and I would also say learning like some sort of sheets would be the tool. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to do things by hand before I actually took a course on using spreadsheets, like an Excel or Google Sheet and things like that. That changed my life.
Yeah, and that's interesting with all these apps and services and everything out there, even with, professional advisors, so many people still come back to using a spreadsheet. That is just a great resource that works.
It's like when somebody gives you journal prompts, right? It's leading you through the thought. And we need templates, we need starters. And when we have a Google Sheet, it's a journal for your finances. And if you're someone like me, their mental math does not come easily in working memory because I am neurodivergent. So these are part of the things I've had to learn to self-accommodate and support. Having a sheet that has a formula set up because I created a template that I get to come back to and use over and over again, it eliminates a lot of the error, the human error in there. And then it also helps me be more present in the process than just somebody giving it to me and me saying, okay, good enough.
Yeah, well, and it helps you look at everything. I mean, that's the beauty of a spreadsheet, that's you can build it the way you want to. You can
Yeah.
look at what you need to. And like you said, and it helps you double check things so you don't make a math error,
Yeah.
hopefully. you know,
Sometimes I
hopefully
look
the
back and say,
spreadsheets are.
that's not, that, why is that doesn't work?
Yeah. So that's an awesome recommendation. So, to wrap up, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
I think number one, it's going to come back to my knowledge of the nervous system and really it could be with anything that's activating, but just knowing how important and how life, how much it impacts your life, your financial decisions, is that when our nervous systems start going into discomfort, fight or flee, freeze, and we all kind of have that sensation. It's either things start to feel like I can't understand the information, I'm getting hot, something like that, where it's nervousness or discomfort. Our body typically tells us you're being flooded with this cortisol, you're being flooded with this chemical that is putting you into survival mode. We need to interrupt it. And one of the ways that we know we can do that is using things like self-talk or talking with others to co-process, but getting logical. This is what's happening. Maybe even self-distancing, talking about self in self-talk. Hey, Stina's getting nervous because we're going over the annual plan. And that is a lot of information to take in all at once. And then when we get logical, really what we want to do is make some wise, slow steps forward by making that plan and not letting that fear block us. So it's going through the fear, but going through it by really using the regulation strategies. So we have access to our cognitive abilities and our full capacity to make decisions that rely on executive function so heavily.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said there. And I just want to highlight make wise, slow steps forward because I think, we oftentimes rush through these decisions. There's so much going on in all of our lives that, it's about taking a breath, moving slowly. What is the saying that the Navy SEALs have is slow as smooth as fast, something like that. I don't know if you've heard that. But
I
it's
haven't, but
really,
it makes sense. And it also goes right back. I teach a breathing exercise for regulating your nervous system. And what I refer to is the Marines do this. They do this box breathing because they need to regulate their nervous system.
So for everybody watching and listening, I will look up the quote and make sure the quote is correct in the show notes. But it's really what you're talking about. It's taking that time, taking a breath, really thinking through what you're doing rather than just rushing through it, because you may not do as good of a job when you're rushing. So
yeah, and we do that when it's uncomfortable, right? Like, let's just get this over with, or I don't know what to do.
Exactly. So yeah, take your time. So Stina, where can people learn more about you and Keymaker Services?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all the social. You can look up.
All right.
On LinkedIn is probably the most active. I do a lot of posts and education, conversation on there that I enjoy to interact with. Otherwise, website is keymakerservices.com. Email is Stina, Stina, at Keymaker Services. And I think that's the best. You can call and text. That's 305-912-5397. I love it. I got the last bit of it actually spells keys. So
awesome.
I think, but yeah, it's probably main is on LinkedIn or the website.
Cool. And for everybody watching and listening, as always, all those links will be in the show notes, so you don't have to keep going back and replaying in the podcast trying to write it down.
I know. How do we spell that? They asked me.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me send it to you.
Yeah. So Stina, thanks again for joining us today on the Get Ready Money podcast.
Thank you, Tony. This was so fun.
Yeah, and thank you everyone, as always, for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money, please be sure to subscribe and to tell a friend. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.